Now we're going to part 6 of the series. If you're just coming now into it or somehow got caught in the middle of it, if you'll go to the very end of this video, in your top right hand corner, it'll go back to number 1. And from every one since, it's the top left hand corner is the click to go to part 2, part 3, part 4, and so on. And so we'll just continue here. I know some of this is quite monotonous. Hopefully in each part of the series here, I do have a couple of fireworks go off, and there's some connections that the spider makes in that web that we're talking about. But let's just continue here. Where we were. In the case of Ea, the transfer proceeded passively and without damage to the older god. Marduk took over the identity of Arsarhuli, the son of Ea, and the god of magic, so that Marduk was integrated into the pantheon of Eridu, where both Ea and Asarhuli originally came from. Father Ea voluntarily recognized the superiority of the son and hands over to him control of humanity, as I talked about at the end of the last one. This association of Marduk with Enki or Ea, while indicating primarily the passing of the supremacy once enjoyed by Eridu to Babylon as a religious and political center, may also reflect an earlier dependence of Babylon upon Eridu, not necessarily of a political character, but in view of the spread of culture in the Euphrates Valley from the south back to the north, in the recognition of Eridu as the older center of part of the younger one. And what we're trying to indicate there, that in the oldest of tales, it tells you that once the kingship was lowered to heaven, the first one was in Eridu. And the whole area here, I guess I ought to interject now, is city-states that are all independent of each other, and pretty much each one had their own major deity and a lot of the common ones of each other. And over time, the control over most of the area and or half of the area and or parts of the area were given to certain ones and deities, and in doing so, then that deity would be taken and put into the temple and so on. And so they developed their pantheon that way. But notice in this pantheon is the passing of the guard, and we already have Anu and Enki, which is already the secondary step, which we talk about in a lot of the other religions, and it's passed on in a third wave to the idea of Marduk, right? And it's done so in a pacifically way, or in harmonious way, in a way that no one is castrated, nothing has to happen, and there didn't have to be a war with the father and the son in any way, shape, or form, like what is shown in a lot of the other religions for this exact same type of event. And it doesn't do it really in any of them. So you can also see a warring type people might have things like that thrown a little more into it, and ones that didn't participate. The only serious rival to Marduk after about 1750 BC was the god Ashur. And you see this, and the idea of Ea, Ashur, Ea is what's said at the bush of what he is supposed to tell them that the god is named of. And then you wonder what Ea is, and Ea is Enki. It seems to be straightforward right there, but also it's said that it's meant that he's saying that he means solemnness and happiness in these other situations. And of course, this is Mount Sinai, which is the Mount of Sin, which is another god of the moon and all these things. And so it's thrown in and taken out of context in an idea that's thrown into what the people apparently get thrown into and are unaware of in Exodus. And in fact, the God there tells them that they haven't been praying to him, and go through this whole process, tell them that they have taken in their tabernacle and the Chiun to their gods, and the star of Remphan, and this is all a type of Saturn thing. So it shows you who these people were worshiping at the time, but also it shows you where they didn't like the golden calf, which we just spoke about as being a sun deity situation, and that we're supposed to mark that and throw it off, and we don't sacrifice bulls anymore, and we don't go with the bull effigy, but we're going to pass into the age of Aries now, and now we're doing lambs and things along that idea, and then that gets carried all the way through to the end of that with Jesus and the lamb into the age of Pisces. And now we're into the Age of Enlightenment again, which is the starting back at Enki in the first part of it, and the switch over that we just talked about a moment ago in the Age of Aquarius. And I remember when I was a kid, and that song by the Fifth Dimension, one of the first records I ever got, and loved that song and stuff. But the dawning of the Age of Aquarius and the enlightenment that comes out of that. And yeah, so we've gone through the cusp and we're well into it, and it seems like it follows some type of idea. Jesus said he would be with us till this time, and it's about time for the reins to come off and to realize the situation of it all, and who were the people that brought humanity to mankind, and what it all happened out of it, and religions, and to quit putting so much density into religion, for it was just a way of coping and everything with everyday life. And if you want to still have religion past this point, gung-ho, but let's not gung-ho with religion to try to do things. For that's one of the reasons that America is so smart and changed so much of the world, because we started right off the bat with the idea that no, this isn't based on religion. This is based on science and democracy and concept and people. And we do have religion, but it isn't going to be the controlling factor. We still have problems to this day with that, and with more and more immigrants coming in, we have more and more problems with that. For some of these people are still caught up definitely in it. They aren't at the level that the other people are. It's kind of a weird, but a third world person versus spaceman situation, and you put them together, and everybody wants to try to act like everybody's equal nowadays, but we can easily see the difference between somebody or primitive or something like that. It was recently and changed to difference of these people that did bring humanity to everybody. So that's the only real serious challenge, I guess, was Ashur at that time. And it's another god of a pantheon and an idea and a concept too. So everybody says, this isn't monotheistic at all and everything. And why does everything have to be monotheistic? Nothing ever was before, and it still isn't now. To this day, the people talk about praying to saints, they pray to Mother Mary and things, There's the whole group of angels, and there's God. So there's what, if you add that up, there's 12 people again, and there's 12 disciples, and all this type of situation that goes along with it. Nobody is just all alone in this situation. It's just a different retelling of the same type of concept and trying to put it off on one ideal, and where it originally came from. Well, Alpha and Omega, it originally came from sun worship and all the things that came out of it, and watching the stars and the cosmos and the things that come out of that, and then starting to attach it to gods, and the idea of when we become out of hunter-gatherers and actually become people that are growing crops and doing things, and how important the seasons come with that, especially the more north you become off the equator, and how the seasons bring rains and bring the floods that help the fields and do all of these things, and we attach them naturalistically to gods. And having done this type of thing, which still at this time you can see a lot of flavor of animistic type of things, and putting animals together and putting it together, but then that animism gets attached to the zodiac, which animism is attached to itself, and taken out of that idea, and man is the master of beasts, and it's a different level that steps way before. And this is preemptive to the Bible, because again, it starts in a garden, and the first thing with Cain and Abel is they're growing. One grows a garden and the other one does animals, and one's jealous of the other one's thing, and blah blah blah. Don't need to go there now, but hopefully you're making more connections off that. Marduk reigns supreme in the south mainly too. He's normally referred to as Bel, or the Lord, or Bel Rabim, or Great Lord. Bel Belim, Lord of Lords. Baal means Lord. Abkal Ali Bul Tereti is leader of the gods. And so there's still a pantheon going on, but it's him just like it is Zeus and all these things. Aku Bel Tereti is the wise Lord of oracles. Mambuelit Metri is reviver of the dead, but also it contains a feminine entity into the idea, and of course it takes a woman to make another child and bring forth life and creation. So there always is going to be a woman. We talked about the very first of it, how that seems to be incest, but hey, if they've only got 3 goddesses in their pantheon, one of those has got to be involved. Who could it be? Well, it can't be the god of gods' wife. That doesn't look good on the idea, so it's going to be this one or that one. Well, that's his sister. It's the only one left, unless we want to redo a pantheon. But they're kids that we make up. Now it gets spread out a little bit, but they're all these gods, and they don't breed with humans. They're just their separate thing, and so you can have the separation of ideas. But we know that it also has to do with deification of past people and putting them into the story of life. People that are revered, and like in the Bible talks about great men of old, men of well renowned, and that's always looked at as being bad in the Bible, but that's only because of it describing how it ruined things whenever the sons of God started having children with the daughters of just men, and then that hybrid situation, or that mulatto, kind of confused and problematic, caused a lot of problems, and they wiped the slate clean again. And we see that a lot of people are gearing towards something like that today. And again, that seems to be kind of pushed on people in a way that shows that 1666 redemption of sin ideal that has been shown in Zabbatai Zeti and all these things, and Kalergi plan, is trying to be forced upon people and all become one and everything. Well, maybe it's possible that the spacemen don't want to be blended in with things that didn't have anything to do with what got them here. That would be a definite step down, and why it does help out other people. We're already helping enough. In fact, far too much, and we sure don't want to ruin America and the people of Europe and things that helped to make all of humanity happen by trying to be so non-racist in a modern day that they ruin their own civilization by putting people in there and stuff. You don't see that trying to go the other way in any situation, and there's a reason for that. And that's enough about current politics. Let's go way back in time again. Zoom. Here we go on our magic train through the tunnel. So, the Enuma Elish, a civil war between the gods, was growing to a climatic battle in the Elder Times, and it's told 3 different situations there. The Anunnaki gods gathered together to find one god who could defeat the gods rising against them. Marduk, a very young god, answered the call, and he was promised the position of head god. And that's where you get the idea of the passing on. And this is again another theogony situation, of course. To prepare for the battle, he makes a bow, fletches arrows, grabs a mace, throws lightning before him, and fills his body with flame, makes a net to encircle Tiamat within it, gathers the 4 winds so that no part of her could escape, creates 7 nasty new winds as the whirlwind and tornado, in fact said to go, each one to go against a deity. And whenever it talks about her having 7 heads perhaps, and whenever I showed you me fighting her in that D&D game, she has 5 different heads. It really is just each different type of dragon put in one. But in the tale, it may also indicate that it wasn't just one person, for it was 7 people in a group that were definitely against this situation, not just and that it happened to all of them too. But that's a symbolic thing too, right? And then these numbers also are symbolic. In fact, the whole thing we're talking about is symbolic. So he had whirlwind and tornadoes and things like that are helping him. So apparently he has on his side, by describing that, he has these powers that have been taken from the other entities, like Neptune and these sea god powers and winds and things, and put together. So he is conglomerative. Instead of getting more and more and more bigger of a pantheon, it's all thrown onto him all of a sudden, right? But it's done so he can defeat the thing that he needs to do. Like all those gods, they all gave him their secret medallion or their scepters, and it all became one scepter. Kind of like the Ragnarok thing and getting all the deals together, right? People can probably make these connections, and it's all this similarity concept. He raises up his mighty weapon too. The mightiest weapon that he has is the rain flood, and that's from these same people in this story and this concept. For there's nothing we really could do about that whole area flooding out, and it was such a flat plain that whenever it had an exaggerated flood, it took out quite a bit. He then sets out for the battle, mounting his storm chariot against chariot, the sun chariot, the whole concept, drawn by 4 horses. So here we have the 4 horsemen and 4 horse chariots with poison in their mouths. In his lips he holds a spell of protection, and in one hand he grasps of an herb, and this is to counteract poison if he gets poisoned, because you see about the older tale and the idea that at the end of all things, Thor gets poisoned and only makes 9 more steps. Well, he's going to counteract that. They got that thrown in there, and only somebody that would know the pantheon and the concept would be able to go, oh, and so he's got the thing to right. Shows you there's a lot more connection to the knowledge of this story too. First, he challenges the leader of the Anunnaki gods, the dragon of the primordial sea Tiamat, to a single combat and defeats her by trapping her with his net, basically in a small telling of this tale, blowing her up with his winds, and then piercing her belly with an arrow by shooting it into her mouth. In an idea, this also though looks like a concept of blown up idea of killing a big crocodile that's affecting people in an area somewhat, or they couldn't fish or things, or have been taking children, as simple as that. And the hiss and the air sound that a crocodile makes, and open his mouth and shoot an arrow off into his mouth. And of course that's seen as being a very vulnerable spot. From the outside he's pretty much armored. People talk about how many arrows you'd have to shoot into one in situations to get rid of them, and you pretty much can't choke them and all these type of things. And it shows you the power of this animal, and he's all muscle, right? Crikey, the Kraken. So he sets out for that battle there, and then first he challenges Tiamat. Then he proceeds to defeat Kingu, who Tiamat put in charge of the army, and wore the tablets of destiny on his breast, and wrestled from the tablets of destiny, wrongfully his, assumed his new position. Under the rain, humans were created to bear the burdens of life, so the gods could now be at leisure and didn't have to do all the things, and people were put in place to do the things and to move the world in the ways that the gods would have done. So like they're tired of playing chess, and so now they've animated the chess pieces and allow it to go ahead and do its thing, right? So here's the concept that the gods have passed on to man, and yet now in the modern day we're still trying to pull that concept off, that didn't happen in any way and has not happened in any way, right? But also there's that Kingu idea, and whenever he gets killed, his head's chopped off and turns pale, and his face is Ki or Tiamat, and the moon always faces one way. And I remember making that connection when I was a kid, and I go, and that's the moon, and oh wow, and that's the man in the moon, and that's Apollo and stuff. And kind of what started this all off for me was Apollo. From when I was a little kid, they were doing the space trek and everything, and there was this Reader Digest thing. I've talked about this before, but my mom talked about it, and I said Apollo, and she goes, yeah, that was a Greek god of the moon. It's because they're going to the moon. And I said, a god like our God? And she goes, well, no, it's different. And I go, oh, well, but that made me have questions about it, and that's where I started studying. And I couldn't have been like 4 or 5 years old. I think it was 5. But I was already reading by that time and stuff. And in fact, the article there I read out of Reader's Digest. My dad coming back from the service going TDY, last time he had seen me, I was trying to read with the spot run, here spot go type thing, and the next time he comes back, I'm reading Reader's Digest to him. It blew him away. There's a whole story around that too, and how I had read something out to him, and my mom thought that I had memorized it in some way of her telling him it to me, and whenever he came. But that's another story altogether, and this isn't about me again. So gods can be at their leisure now. Marduk was depicted as a human, though, often with his symbol of the snake dragon, which he had taken over from the god Tishpak. Another symbol that stood for Marduk was the spade, and so we have this idea of culturing and farming and stuff, but this symbolic snake type thing that he killed off. And this goes into the Bible and ideas of a snake type situation too. But also you see that through all of those religions there, and different god and goddesses holding the snakes. And it's the same symbology as that master of beast, but snake symbology was real important with the Sumerians too, for in the ancient tale of Gilgamesh, he had finally gone and seen the Noah of the Bible and found out that he can't live forever, but he can get the fountain of youth. And that's where that concept comes from. But it was a plant, and he goes to this trouble of getting the plant, but in being exhausted and going to sleep, a snake snuck up and ate it. And whenever he woke up, he saw the snake going off, and it shed its skin so to become brand new. And they had beliefs back then that snakes were almost immortal and they could just shed their skin when they got old and gray. And of course that's just a shedding of a skin situation, but here again that snake ideology shows itself all the way from Jorgamander to this original Sumerian concept, and the Absu and the abyss and the water and the great serpent and and everything else. People were serpent people and yeah, right. So they draw some people with some serpent heads and bird heads and everything on them. Well, oh my God, they were serpent people. Yeah, do you think that too about the Egyptians when they show that? Or is that just animism, all versions of it, and some is a little more primitive than the other? Some things are that simple. A lot of people write into a lot of things. A lot of people don't figure out simple connections. It's really kind of odd. I know a lot of connections I didn't make until much later that I thought were just like, pfft. And you meet people that made those connections that didn't make other ones, especially in researching stuff like this when you get together with somebody that knows a lot about it. Let's continue. Babylonian texts talk about the creation of Eridu by the god Marduk as the first city, but that wouldn't work well in the timeline. But yet Eridu is still said to be the first city to pass down. Gilgamesh was 3/4 a god and so on, and in the tablet list it shows you, and when the flood happened, all that. And it's the holy city or dwelling of the other god's delight. Nabu, the god of wisdom, is a son of Marduk, and a lot of people have hooked that up to being Mercury and wisdom and Hermes, and here we go with that exact same pantheon and the same people and the same positions in quite a few ways. Adad in Akkadian and Ishkur in Sumerian and Hadad in Aramaic are the names of the storm god in the Babylonian Assyrian pantheon itself. All three are usually written by the ideogram